We were a community under siege back in the late 40s, 50s and 60s. And therefore had to protect ourselves and preserve who we were. Black majority churches didn't set up because people wished to segregate themselves from society. Many of the sons and daughters of parents who came over during the early Windrush years wanted to join the established churches here, but were refused. Many of our churches also born out of churches that were established in the Caribbean, especially the Pentecostal churches, and then came to these countries. But there's many black majority churches now which are beginning to be diversified, and many people from other cultures are coming in. There shouldn't be a black church and a white church anywhere, as we know. But the black majority churches do have a history that should be remembered, celebrated, treasured, because it's what gave us a voice and a strength.
However, like many other church communities at the time, the congregations were divided.
There were lines that divided us along doctrine and other, egos and so on, if I'm being honest with you.
And that's been from tradition and history, unfortunately, where you had different denominations didn't mix.
Seeing the real need in their city, Men for Positive Change was formed by a few faithful men like Joe Jackson, ex-pro footballer for Wolves.
At the age of 31, I came back to Wolverhampton and I saw a climate that was very different to what I left. Gangs and young people who I knew, family members who I knew, people who I grew up with whose children were being stabbed and shot.
We had a lot of incidents in Wolverhampton, some murders, some serious assaults, and I actually made phone calls to, I think, 4 different guys who were members of 4 different churches.
We needed to pull, I wouldn't call it resources because there weren't really any resources, but come together and have like a shared understanding of how we could approach this.
But what we started doing really was actually just meeting and actually walking through some of the key areas in Wolverhampton where we knew gangs were prevalent.
We saw was people that were grateful that we were out there doing something.
And we organised a peace walk. There were about 300 people who turned up on the day, and then the church leaders were at the front of this walk.
For the first time, church leaders from across the denominations were walking and working together. Then the pandemic hit.
And it just changed everything.
The impact on our community with the pandemic was quite profound. A lot of the ministers were doing back-to-back services, burying people.
Leaders from various churches started to meet regularly, forming a bond beyond anything that had ever existed before.
And for me, it was very much a sort of peer-to-peer support thing initially. We began to build real, solid relationships. What is at stake, in the community is far greater than what day we worship on or how we do communion or any of that.
This new network became one voice, starting conversations across the city with the police, the city council, and the Royal Wolverhampton Hospital Trust.
We were already engaging with the city council and the NHS about what could be done to deal with the disproportionate levels of death and suffering within the African Caribbean community.
Ailments like diabetes, high blood pressure, kidney disease, and things of that kind, heart disease. And one of the things that came from that discussion was for us to develop an allotments project. Public Health and the council, they helped to bring funds together, brought the right people together.
Out of this togetherness has come Party in the Park, where over 3,000 people from different backgrounds gather, demonstrating the power of one church together.
And it was about bringing some kind of activity, some kind of fun to the community.
It's about churches coming together around Wolverhampton to show God's love in a practical way.
There's so much potential in Wolverhampton. On a day like today, we're looking at something that people wouldn't have thought possible was probably 10, 15 years ago.
This is not about denomination, it's not about black, white, whatever you are, whoever you are, this is kingdom business.
Togetherness started with a small band standing against knife crime. Then responding to the pandemic brought whole congregations together. And now, Churches for Positive Change can see a new kind of pandemic, requiring even deeper oneness.
Look, going forward and looking at young people and the whole mental health agenda, for me, I keep saying it's a new pandemic.
It's about growth, and the growth for me is is young people capturing the vision.
In Christ, we are one. So I really hope that our children can grasp that and walk in that and live in that.
There's love here, and our youth, they can come together and they can embrace this truth. They can take Wolverhampton to the next level. They can take it further than we have ever seen.
No one single church can bring genuine, lasting change to a city. Only one church, together.
I am very grateful that I am seeing the Church of Jesus Christ in Wolverhampton and across the Black Country come together as one.
Churches for positive change, men for positive change, coming together. We love Black Country. People coming together, like-minded people, driving change.
It's happening now, in my lifetime, in this generation, and all praise be to God.